Hi.
You made it! Yay! How are you?
I'm just fine. My neighbor has a little boy who scratched himself.
Oh,
And so I packaged some cotton pads and some Dettol and tossed it out the window. So I am now officially the Florence Nightingale of my block.
you've done your
But I thought that's the thing about live. And of course the dog is barking, so I've got a whole bowl full of treats for Bandit in case of a bark.
I'm sure she'll be featured at some point later on. So we've got loads of people starting to join us. So where should we start, Marv? And you look so glamorous. Look at you.
Well, I got dressed up for all of you because I just thought it was a good moment to get out of my pajamas, you know?
Have you? Yeah,
So I put on a nice dress.
Right.
Yeah.
You sort of sort the top half out, don't you? But you just don't going on the bottom half.
Exactly.
All sorts of things could be going on and probably are. So obviously we're delighted to have you here with us at the Big Draw. I mean, for anybody who you don't know who we are, so I am Kate. I'm the director of the Big Draw, and I am super excited to have lovely Martha. She can tell you all about herself shortly with us. And actually, Martha, you've had quite a long-standing relationship, I'd say, with the Big Draw. I mean, I've been at the Big Draw 7 years now, and you certainly, I know we've regularly collaborated together.
Yes,
but of course
it's lovely, isn't it? We've just had such a long relationship and done so many things together.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved going to Sheffield. That was wonderful.
Right.
And
when
you
was
must
getting
be,
involved? When was it you first?
gosh, I guess maybe 12 years ago, something like that. But you must be missing working with everyone and those big crowds of people coming to your events. And
yeah, I don't think you can replace the physical, can you? But we have been doing a lot of digital work and finding new ways. Oh yeah, your hair does look nice, Marv.
Looks a little bit dark. Sorry, everyone. Just getting used to this.
No,
yeah.
I saw a few people say, "Oh, your hair looks nice." Yeah, it looks lovely. I got back by your hair. So. Yes. So, but we've been just doing loads of other things instead, trying to meet the challenges that COVID has thrown at us. And
yes, and
you know, so it works, doesn't work, I suppose, like anything.
I thought that
space to collaborate digitally.
Yeah. Because Kate, I thought that we would talk a little bit about how we can manage as artists, and because it's been such a tough year for everyone, and I thought that really instead of pretending everything is normal, that actually the best thing is just to admit that it's been the strangest, most difficult year. And I just thought that in the time we have together that it might be really useful to put our heads together, because I can see everyone's comments on the screen and I'm scanning them as I'm talking. So I'd like this to be, you know, really a chance for all of us to put our heads together and figure out how do we navigate through this difficult year. And it does look like if there's not going to be an actual lockdown in the UK, there'll be a managed lockdown. Yeah. And I just feel that for those of us who didn't write the opera during lockdown and didn't produce the extraordinary exhibition or whatever the expectations were in that period, I certainly didn't, that maybe it would be a great thing to plan together, really, how to manage this period in the winter ahead. Certainly a lot of online opportunities have come up. The other art fair that's going on right now is very exciting. And I know that will take
things actually. So my sort of the notes I've written, so I've got a few scribbles in front of me so I don't forget with my old lady brain. I've got, yes, let's focus on tips for artists, challenging times. I think we talked, when we were talking about some of this the other day, Mark, we also talked about, you know, those fallow periods that everybody gets, you know, how
absolutely
to get through them.
Yes.
So how do you keep yourself sort of motivated, but also creative and true to yourself, and just sort of keep sane, really. I think particularly during lockdown, you know, how have you found that, and what, you know, have you got any tips you'd like to share in that whole sort of artist block? So it's that whole thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
What would be your nuggets to share?
Well, the first thing is that I think that what we're all missing is that stimulation of seeing one another. And I know that, for instance, doing big draw events always spiced up my month or week or whatever it was. I mean, our trip to Sheffield was just a riot, wasn't it? And we're not getting any of that. And so we're kind of, it's not that we're working in a vacuum, because we always have the internet and we have our friends and we have our bubble and so on, but it's not the same. So how do we deal with that? Well, one possibility is to look at what we've got. In other words, try not to dismiss what's right in front of you. So whether it's your dog or your cat as a great artist model, or just looking out the window, your window's a natural frame, and it really does, you know, really present a wonderful painting that maybe you took for granted before. For example, most of us, I mean, I certainly chase my tail a lot and dash out a lot and procrastinate a lot, but in lockdown, I was kind of forced to look at the world right in front of me. And so a lot of life drawing comes to mind. I did a lot of sketches of my dog Bandit, who...
Where is Bandit?
I'm not sure if you can see her. I'll just tilt the camera. Can you see her?
Yeah.
Sleeping on the sofa, and but she was a great model. This is a little painting. I'll just hold up a little painting. This is a little painting of Bandit sleeping. And ideally, I should transfer it to a much larger round canvas. But of course, you know, I haven't gotten around to that. But it's just an example of the sort of thing you can do at home.
Yeah.
And on your walk.
Scale, as you say, it doesn't have to be like a monumental, you know, and it's too stress and it's just too hard to contemplate.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm a great believer in small steps, incremental steps. There's a Japanese term for it, which I forget, which I could run off screen and go look it up for you, but I'll text it to you afterwards. But it's a beautiful concept. The idea is that you do things in small incremental steps instead of overwhelming yourself thinking, oh, I'm going to do an exhibition the next 6 weeks, or a book, or, you know, all of the huge projects that can be intimidating. I would say try and do it in little sketches. Like, I noticed that Shishi Parish joined us a few minutes ago. I'm a huge fan of hers. If you follow her Instagram, Twitter, you'll see when she goes to work, she's doing a lot of sketches in a notebook on the underground, which must help her hugely with the stress and the strain of going on the tube right now. But also her sketches always are dreamy and highly imaginative, and so she's drawing every day against this tide of worry, and I think instead of doing the huge paintings or the stage designs or all the things that she's capable of doing, she's making sure she does a little every day. Oh, she's the same. She just got off the tube, and yes, she's sketching underground. So you can follow her sketches. So it's really a matter of picking up that energy from other artists, I think. Instead of seeing them as your competition, see them as your friends and inspiration, because we're all absolutely unique. There's no point in thinking of it as some sort of race. It's completely artificial and counterproductive. In fact, the more friendships, the more people you know who are soldiering on, the better, I think. So try and stay in touch with your friends, including artist friends, and follow them as you would swimming together. You know, just keep their energy close to you, their good energy. I mean, Cinders McLeod is another example of someone extremely creative, and she like me was a political cartoonist, and she adapted to the new world because there isn't that much political cartooning work around, and she's launched a whole series of books called the Money Bunny series, which is teaching children money literacy. So the idea is it encourages children how to earn money and how to spend it, how to save it, how to give it even. So Cinders McLeod is a very good friend of mine, and she's a very very talented political cartoonist. She worked after me. I was at the Globe and Mail in Toronto doing a pocket cartoon, and after I left, after a few years, she joined the Globe and Mail in Toronto, and she did the most extraordinary political cartoons. So extraordinary that we think, allegedly, all lawyers out there, allegedly, we think that Banksy ripped her off. I think whatever it is, I think so. So her imagery was absolutely fantastic. So do look up her work. And she is a great example of someone who reinvented herself. You could say I'm in the process of reinventing myself. I've been a committed political cartoonist. Till now, I'm still kind of working as a political cartoonist. I've got a end of year news cartoon due next week. It was just postponed till next week for the Jewish Chronicle.
Yeah.
Because it's Jewish New Year this Friday, and so it'll be actually for Yom Kippur instead of Rosh Hashanah. But it's a pretty rare opportunity these days for me, whereas I used to do it daily.
Yeah, it's more of a, just building on what you were just saying. One of the things when we were chatting the other day, just in terms of preparing for today, and I think me and Sandra both jotted it down, and I just love it. I just want to read it. And it was we were talking very much about this thing of, you know, it doesn't have to be, as you know, it doesn't have to be the opera, as you say.
No, exactly.
Much more manageable. And you said, you know, you're using the original yeast. You're not starting from scratch. And I love that
absolutely.
So much.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit more about that and what you mean by that?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's just that I feel that artists can be spooked by a blank page or canvas, especially on a deadline, especially if they're feeling a bit rusty. Because when I was working all the time, 6 editions a day, every day, I'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning, be at the Evening Standard by 6, and really put my coat on at 7, 8 in the evening, and there'd be a big story breaking, take my coat back off, sit back down, work some more. So I was not got home till midnight. It was a very long, very stimulating, exciting day. But the difference was I was drawing all the time.
Yes.
When you go back and after a break, like I do these days, and face a white page, blank page, the first thing I do is draw out old cartoons that I think worked well and spread them around me. So that's what I mean by working like a baker with the original yeast, that trusty yeast. Lovely. Just go back to the things you do that you've done well and remind yourself of the fact that you've done it before. Yeah. And then you're not scared anymore. You think, oh, I could borrow that title, that masthead to get me going. That worked well. That scale was perfect. Even if it's just a matter of scale, or that color printed really well, and then you begin, and then you're away. I think the worst thing is to forget that you have done it before, that you've rallied before, you've delivered before. So remind yourself that you're a pro and you can do it. I think in a way, try and talk to yourself in your head the way you would to a really good friend.
Yeah.
Or your daughter or your son. I mean, you wouldn't dream of saying to your daughter or your son, oh, I don't know if you could do that. Oh, good luck. You know.
It is being a bit with yourself.
Have a boiled egg, here's a coffee, go for it. And I think you've got to have that inner voice, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
Think,
And if you,
I mean,
you don't have that, just ask a friend.
one thing I made a note of after we spoke the other day was, because obviously there's a lot in the press about everything that's happening in the sector with, well, just with COVID and the arts and cuts and
Yes,
and all this. It's all very depressing, actually.
it is. It
But,
is.
but just going back to artists and the role of artists, I mean, obviously as change makers, they have a key role. But I mean, in terms of actually the creativity of artists is always, especially at the moment, it's in the press all the time. But what about the resilience of artists? I mean, do you think that generally there is an innate resilience in artists that actually, in some ways, perhaps is better equipping them to see through these difficult months than perhaps it might be for people from other sectors?
I I I look to artists who are resilient as my model. I can't say that all artists are or that I am all the time, but I definitely, when I need to be resilient, when I can feel myself, my spirit sinking, I either call a really good friend or I pull a book off the shelf or look at a painting by an artist or a cartoon or a drawing that lifts me up. You know, there are those sort of tricks you can play on your brain almost. You know, you can listen to certain music. I find that one of my models is the author of the graphic novel Cancer Vixen. She was actually cartoonist for the New Yorker, and she developed breast cancer. And of all things, she drew through her treatment. So rather than dropping the pen, she clung to her pen and drew through the whole experience. And it's actually not only a story of her battle, which is why it's called Cancer Vixen, but she also fell in love with a chef in New York. And so it's also a love story. This wonderful Italian chef, and he adores her, and it's really the first love she's ever, proper love she's ever had. So it's a story of resilience on many levels. The fact that the graphic novel just took off is an example of just how she used this adversity and turned it into something so special. It's now a classic graphic novel, but also that she found love through all the truths and honesty that you'll see. I don't want to give it away, but it's a fantastic read. So she's a great example of a resilient artist I look up to. I don't know if I would be as so brave, but I like to think so.
I think pretty brave, and I think that's a nice little link through, because one of the things I had on my list was one of the things that we've touched on a little bit. Lots of times we've met actually is really sort of, I mean, I think there's probably going to be people who are on the call, and just so everyone knows on the call, if you do have any questions, put them in the chat.
Yes, please. I'm scanning your comments, so anything you ask, I'll try and answer.
Text me.
Yeah,
ones as well.
and Kate too.
Yeah, but people are always interested, Mark, whenever we do these, how people got where they are. You know, there's always that thing of, I think you probably get it in every industry, you know, where somebody sees somebody and they are successful, they have a profile, their work's good, they're on top of their game, they're still working, there's good output, you know, they present well, they just think, oh, well, it's all right for them, isn't it? They're, you know, all that.
Oh,
you don't see
well,
how did you, I mean, what was your career path? How did you get into it? Where did you start? And what
I would say, first of all, it's been a bumpy ride. So it's never really smooth. And I would say, you could say I kind of peaked early in the sense that I had the daily cartoon for a couple of years at the Globe and Mail, and then I was at the Evening Standard for a few years, and that was super exciting.
Weren't you, at the time?
But I haven't had anything like that since, so I haven't been able to match that. And so I've had to turn to different kinds of work and had different kinds of fulfillments and pleasures and so on. But it's not been the same. So in other words, there are cartoonists in the past who literally sit in their chair for 50 years. I mean, the history of cartooning is so fascinating, because in the old days, things were more stable. And like Charles Schulz, for example, he drew practically 50 years to the day. And Reg Smythe, who's the great cartoonist who created Andy Cap, he produced that cartoon for 50 years. And would you believe that he left behind, when he was ill at the end of his life, he left a year's worth of cartoons so that his death wouldn't inconvenience the editor. So that things were a lot steadier then. Things were rocky on Fleet Street when I joined Fleet Street. Now, maybe had things not been so rocky, they wouldn't have been so open to change. So maybe as a woman, they wouldn't have let me in, because they were interested in women readers suddenly, whereas they weren't that interested before. As you know, it was such a male-dominated
But just
world.
for people on the call,
Yeah.
you were the first female on Fleet Street, weren't you? I mean, which is incredible, really, at that time. Because obviously very closed, and I mean,
to do a daily cartoon,
to do a daily pocket cartoon at that time, and have a woman in that pioneering role is, I think, quite something.
And then daily editorial cartoon, which was the larger slot. There, what I have here, just to, there's this wonderful book called The Inking Woman. Sorry about the reverse type.
I went to the
It's a beautiful book. It's called The Inking Woman, and I'm in it, but so are many others. And it shows just how many women there are who are cartooning out there, but haven't really been given the space. There are lots of reasons for that, and I don't want to bore you with all the reasons, but essentially, the old way of putting a newspaper together was much more rigid than today. So slots were reserved for certain things that never changed. So the shape of the cartoon never changed. It was all in a much more rigid format. Now with the internet, in theory, there are many more opportunities. You could, in theory, change the cartoon during the day and allow women cartoonists in during the day. So there's no reason why, for example, the great cartoonist Martin Rosen can't be seen online until 4 p.m. And then as of 4 p.m., you could scroll through all of the responses from all the political cartoonists across the land. To me, this would be fascinating, and no threat to Martin Rosen, who will still retain his deserved position. But you would have more of a all-round scope, just like you do on an interview show. On an ideal platform, I would have Cinders McLeod right next to me, Shishi Parrish. I would have Lorna Miller, Lou McKeever, all of these wonderful women who are friends of mine and great political cartoonists. They would all be here. We'd all be talking together. But as you know, on newspapers, decisions happen very fast, often in a bit of a panic, and those women aren't there. They haven't been encouraged to be part of that kind of machine. And hopefully that will change. It doesn't always change automatically. If there's a woman editor, you think if there's a woman editor, women will be let in. It's not necessarily the case. We know from Margaret Thatcher, she promoted men. She didn't promote women around her. So we mustn't think women versus men. We must think in terms of enlightened people and people who are a bit behind. And not think men versus women at all. Because in my experience, I've had supporters who are men and women, and I'm sure everyone at home is thinking the same, that it's not a simple dichotomy at all. It's really who believes in you and whom you believe in and are excited by, and it's much looser than that.
And I spotted one other question. I think it was from Wilson. I think it was asking you about, I think it was like a favorite moment or an inspirational moment or a changing moment. It's gone off the screen now. Do you have? Is there a particular that you but you can pinpoint that really was, wow, that was
a good moment? Yes. Okay. Can I tell you a quick story? Because it really shows I mean, I'm not punchy like this anymore, but I was younger. I was, I guess about 29 or 30. And I was supposed to meet the editor of a newspaper at breakfast. I was terrified, and I arrived with my portfolio, and I was dressed in black. I was doing everything that you think you should do. You know, I was there early, and I waited and waited and waited, and she never turned up. And I was going to just go home feeling a bit forlorn. And I thought, damn it, I was looking forward to this breakfast. This was a meeting that was so important to me, and it was about a slot in a newspaper. So I called the newspaper, and I, because it was so early in the morning, she picked up. This is a true story. And normally the secretary would take the call at a newspaper, but because it was so early, she picked up. And I said, "It's Martha. Where are you?" And she said, "Oh, Martha, I'm so sorry, I forgot. Are you free tomorrow morning?" And of course I was free for the rest of my life, you know, so I said, "Sure, I'm free tomorrow morning." So I arrived for breakfast the next day in jeans and a t-shirt, totally relaxed. Honestly, I felt I sort of had the moral high ground because she'd basically blown me off. So I was so relaxed, and I didn't mind at all, and I was so myself. And I think I gave a better impression because I wasn't all tense and nervous. And she took my portfolio away, and I got the job.
Wow.
That's how I got the job at the Evening Standard. So I actually got rejected. And, you know, and I think the way it works is it's such a cliche, but you've got to turn a no into a yes. I think it's no, no, no all over the place. And even your best friends can be naysayers. They can say, "Not a good idea," or they can say, "You don't have a chance," but I think you've just got to fight back, and you've got to, and at a certain point, you do need to back off and try something new, which is sort of what I'm doing now. I'm trying painting, and I like doing t-shirt design. I like doing all sorts of things. Signs, COVID-19 safety signs, artists everywhere. You can do your own and sell them to independent schools. There are all sorts of opportunities, if you like, in the here and now. Zoom art classes, which I do on the Marf Loves Drawing channel, mainly with Japanese kids because the timing's good and they're used to working on computers. But there are all sorts of things you can be doing. Essentially, the whole world is saying, no, 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 no. And you need to think, there's got to be a way. And that's where artists are terrific because they're so resourceful. They can make a castle out of a cardboard box.
Yeah, they can see things other people don't see. That's what they always
They can. That's what they do. That's who they are. And I think try and tap that energy, because not only is that going to be good for your work, but it's going to be good for your friends, be good for your family, because the truth is the worry and the depression is just like a hole, and you'll bury yourself, and you have to be terribly careful not to do that. I think there's got to be a bit of keep calm and carry on in all this, that yes, it's difficult, but at least most of us aren't sick right now. And I think that honestly, we just have to keep soldiering on and keep each other going, because in a weird way, there was a beautiful quote I read years ago by Catherine Mansfield, the writer. She said, the most irresponsible thing is to show anxiety in the waiting room. The idea is that when things are bad, to show that you're really scared or nervous is kind of contagious and maybe not a good idea. My best friend's a doctor. She works in A&E at the Royal Free in London, and she had a terrible time back in March. And I was worried about her getting sick. And she said, "Now don't stop you doing that, because I've got to do my job. So it doesn't help me for you to be all anxious and worried for me. I need to carry on." So she's been a great model for me. I know we're talking mainly about artists today, but you know, when you think of someone who's actually on the front line, who's that brave, you feel, come on, everybody, we're artists, we're lucky we can do this too. If they can, we can.
Just wanted to pick out on a few other things. We have talked quite a bit around sort of tips and challenging times, room, but it would be good to think a little bit more. So you mentioned some of your you've touched on some of the people, and you've been very generous. You've talked about some of the artists on the call as well, in terms of who inspire you and who you admire. Just rolling back a little bit, thinking about what we find quite often on these calls is that their family, their home life, their upbringing often does have quite a marked effect on
Yes,
creativity.
absolutely right.
It would. I think I would love to. I think maybe if you talk a little bit about your family, you know, the Montreal, the London, the Canadian, who you are, the whole thing.
Sure.
There's some,
But if,
because it's a
because
very story.
sure, I will. But before I start talking about myself, I feel, honestly, I just feel it's, first, it must be incredibly hard for young people right now who are looking at a very uncertain world with, you know, unemployment looming, an uncertainty. I know they're back at uni now, but the uncertainty, not knowing how long it's going to last, trying to carry on. One person I know who's just joined is the daughter of a very dear friend who should be at uni right now and is torn whether to stay home or go back to campus, knowing there are just a few friends there. And she is an architect in training. And so it's important for her to be with her peers right now. So she's drawing on her own, basically alone, drawing and trying her best on Zoom. So I just wanted to just say just first, I'm just really thinking of you. So just briefly, I was very, very, very fortunate. I'm one of 5 children. My dad was a great novelist called Mordecai Richler, and my mother was an extraordinary woman, an artist at heart, who took me by the hand to so many museums and galleries as a little one. I remember her taking me to a Frank Stella sculpture show like it was yesterday. This may be 40 years ago. And at that time, there were very few museum guards. So she encouraged me to climb inside the sculpture. The Firebird series, which were on display that particular day, were sways of metal coated with glitter. So when you climbed inside, it was like you were inside this kind of jungle of color. And I will never forget it. And each show she took me to, whether it was contemporary or old masters, she had such patience with me, and she literally led me by the hand through so much art. And so it's not just my father, but also my mother, who encouraged me in different ways. We had the sort of childhood where you'd open your door in the morning, your bedroom door, and it would be just a little bit stiff. And then you'd realize there was a pile of books outside resting up against your bedroom door that my parents felt that would be good for me to read right now.
Just leaving them there.
Yeah. So there was, and also there was tremendous fun. They also knew how to steer you away from things that weren't really necessarily your natural path. For example, I remember giving my dad, who is such a great writer, one of my first essays in university, and he couldn't stop laughing. He just thought it was so terrible. And he said, "You used to be able to write really well till you went to university." So they had a great sense of fun, and they were also my siblings, who were very inspiring, all very creative, extraordinary people. So yes, I was lucky, super lucky. So I think that definitely gives you a tremendous head start. What you do with the rest of your life is always down to you, and I have so many weaknesses. So it's just a matter of figuring out, hopefully in the time I'm allowed on Earth, figuring it out by my ultimate deadline.
I think it's right. I think it's almost like that cultural capital, isn't it? That your parents imbue you with at that age, and you carry that with you throughout your life, and you either choose to build on it or you don't. And I mean, that's up to you, but it does.
That's right. And you take what you can, but I've noticed from books I read when I was young that I would highlight certain passages. And when I open those books again, I think, why didn't I pay attention to that? I highlighted it, but why didn't I follow that? And I think it's the same with good advice from your parents or your friends. You need to mature and live, don't you? You can't take it on overnight. So I think a lot of it's through practice, and back to us as artists, no matter what your background, it's all about practice. It's all about embracing it every day and not letting it go, because that goes back to our original theme, doesn't it, of
ongoing learning process,
continuing. Yeah,
and having to adapt and change all the time. I mean,
adapt and change, and you're never starting with the blank page, really, because you've done the work before. So just keep going, keep going, keep going. It's a process, and if you don't enjoy the process, it's probably not the right work for you.
Yeah. So a few of the questions that I've got here. So one of the questions that's come up a lot in previous is, it's this whole, I suppose it's the analog digital thing. So, you know, and how that works for you, and what you use or what you don't use, or how you might start on one and then link into another, or do you just stick with one? I mean, I know when we were talking the other day, you know, you were talking, I think you were saying like your phone's almost a tool, but you think about, you know, Photoshop, scanners, you know, it doesn't have to be high-tech stuff, but what's your relationship between the two, and how does it work with you in your practice?
Since the late 90s, really, cartoonists have been expected to deliver print-ready work. So basically you do, I think most of us are still using pen and paper, but then you scan it in yourself and you do your own color and tone and so on. And that is, I'm half technician, half artist. So, and a lot of people are working this way today, most of us, I think. And the great thing is you have greater control, because in the old days, it would be a bit of a surprise when you opened the book or you opened the newspaper. You think, oh, or phew, or whatever you thought. But now you can control it right to the end, so you'll know exactly how it comes out. So it's an advantage. So one question here is, what skills would you say you needed to be a political cartoonist? I would say half of it is just a passion for the news and a sense of kick-ass, you know, that none of these politicians are, you know, a lot of these politicians don't deserve, they really don't deserve their position, where, you know, especially right now we're being ruled by dictator madmen, you know, with Trump and Boris. So you need to sort of have a sense of fun with that, I think, to be a political cartoonist. But the technical skills are important too, because you don't want that to be a block or scary. You want it to be absolutely smooth and easy. So once you've done your drawing, to feed it into the scanner with about an hour to spare, so that you can correct any lines that you're not happy with, simplify if you can, and do your color and be ready to send bang on time. So you have to have a sense of time. So before I became a political cartoonist, I did a comic strip. Now that was only a weekly deadline, but it felt tight at the time. So you need to get used to those deadlines, and then set up fake deadlines for a few weeks before you start on your first day. So there was a secretary at the Globe and Mail who let me do a trial for about 4 weeks before I went live. So imagine you and I doing this interview. Just so everyone at home knows, I was very nervous about wasting your time talking, so I wanted to be sure it was interesting for you. So we did 2 rehearsals for this. We went through lots of questions, and Kate and I have known each other for years, but we were really keen to prepare. So to be a good political cartoonist, or good anything, I think, got to do your rehearsals, do your practice, do your homework, do your thinking, so that when you go live, you're not grasping at straws, you're totally fine. because I was so nervous. I ate so much chocolate. I was so worried about this. But right now, I'm so happy because I know that
I would add to that, Mark.
we're covering good stuff. So I'm very happy.
As a lady who has a birthday tomorrow and is edging very closely towards quite a large number, I would say it's also being authentic to yourself, isn't it? Be absolutely true to your own voice and be authentic, and don't even try to be something that you're not, because people see immediately through it, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, Kate, because I think that is a great skill in life. Know yourself. You know, if you can understand your own limits, admire the ones who do it best that you can't possibly do. I mean, just recently I did a copy of an artist called Alistair Gow, who was born in 1988, who's an absolute master of composition. And I did a copy to scale of his work because I can't do that. I can't do that absolutely elegant, simple form. And he can. And I did a to scale copy. I'm going to give it to my nephew Max as a present because it came out really well. Can I just show it to you?
No, do.
It's just a copy.
Really interesting. But we talked about this.
But it kind of gives you a sense of like you're always learning. I think you never stop learning. And
we were talking about your father, and I remember you were saying that he used to say to you, Martha, speak plain English. Oh, it's lovely colours. Look at the lovely colours.
That's a work by Alistair Gow, G-O-W, from 2019. And a lot of you at home will recognize the Edward Hopper shape. Yeah. You see that gentle perspective. If you look at Nighthawk's Cafe, for example, that's a very Edward Hopper composition, but he's reduced it further. And it's just gorgeous. And now this is just my copy, but the original is so beautiful and very expensive. So I did a copy. I mean, one thing that artists can do is beautiful copies. Why not?
I do think you like yourself. I love the fact that you admire this other artist and you think, because I remember this is what I was just saying. So you were saying your father used to say, Martha, speak plain English. That's what I would say to you as a skill. I was sort of saying that's really interesting because it's almost the equivalent of that in drawing is almost like distilling it down to that pure, like the confidence. Take a few marks.
So true.
And have that flair and confidence and distill them down.
It's so beautifully, Kate. And
I'm sure he would have a few things to say about that as well. And you go,
I mean, great chefs, they follow recipes from great chefs, right? And they learn. So why should it be different for artists? Don't be afraid to do copies for yourself or even as gifts for others. Why not sit in front of a Raphael cartoon and at the V&A or wherever and draw? Why not? If you saw that Raphael was teaching an afternoon seminar at the V&A, wouldn't you dash down there? Well, he is. All you do is sit in front of it and draw. It's fantastic. So when I think of all the possible ways we can use our time and get our creative energy going, we can also jump off if we can't call a friend because they're working, you know, or it's just difficult to phone a particular time, or if we're feeling too down to talk, just call up something on Google Images and start copying something beautiful that you love. Why not? It's like having a conversation with a great artist. I mean, if Picasso was calling you right now, wouldn't you pick up the phone, say hello?
Well, you just do a doodle, a sketch. I've done that before in the past with
Why not?
Feeling a bit down about something, and it was just a friend, and we didn't do any. There was no verbal language. It was just sending a picture of the sketch. No words were allowed.
Isn't that lovely? Like your colleague Sandra, remember on the Zoom call, we did a little portrait of her and just sent it to her. It's lovely. I mean, it's a form of engagement. Talking is tiring for a lot of us. Zoom has been tiring. I've been reading about Zoom fatigue. So try to be conscious of that too. Like if you need to draw, if you need to do something, save your energy a little bit. Try not to squander your energy too much on chit chat in the street or Zoom calls that aren't necessary. Just try and defer, or emails that aren't necessary. Try and push that away for a few hours. Everyone will understand. You can always say, I'm on deadline right now, and give yourself that time. And the way you would for a good meal, you know, just really take time, and don't be afraid of that time. Don't feel you have to do everything in such a rush. I mean, I've pretty much shared with you just about everything I've learned. So we'll have to update this in 20 years.
I'm just looking at my notes. I'm sure there's loads more we could unpick. There's so much.
Oh, how sweet. There's someone who just posted that it was their professor had said that it was like looking at clay. It was like is it clay or clay? Yeah. Maybe she can help me with that. I was having a conversation with Paul Clay. It is absolutely right. You're talking about what mattered to them most, right? And you're talking with your pen and your paints. So you've got free tutoring from the masters of the ages, from books, museums, galleries, and Google. And it's free. So, you know, I did take a couple of courses with Domestika, which is online art courses. I would recommend it also for people who feel that they need a little igniting. It helped me a little, but after a while it gets a little intense. So take care not to sign up for too many courses at once. The daughter of a friend of mine was telling me that she had signed on to so many Zoom conferences and calls and courses that she was really quite overwhelmed. So try not to do too much of it, but it is there and it's quite cheap. It was about £12 or so for two courses and interesting people. It's Domestika with a K. So Domestika, Domestika. So it's very good. It's got some good people.
And Marv, tell us what are you working on at the moment, or what do you want to work on? And have you got anything? I mean, I know that. Excuse me. I know that you are working on a few things, but I don't know what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say publicly. So well, I will you. But you told me a few interesting things the other day. So the most important deadline right now is that end of year news cartoon, because it's a news roundup. So I need to go back over the entire year. And that'll be in the Jewish Chronicle next week. And what they want this time is a page full of cartoons. So I need to do about a dozen cartoons. So it's a little bit like when someone says to you, can you do a portrait, but do you mind including, you know, my four kids, the 3 dogs and the neighbors? You know, it's not quite the same as doing the classic cartoon where you just have one composition. You have to do it all together and it has to work together. I've done it before for many years and I enjoy the format, but this has been such a difficult year. It took me, to be honest, took me a couple of days to work out how to find any humor in a year of COVID. But and Trump's beyond a laugh now. I mean, he's just such a monster, and there are all sorts of issues that I had to tackle, and I hope that I'll be okay. That's all I can say about that. And as for larger plans, I have the funniest surprise tonight, and that is I'm going to be hosting a radio arts program on Radio Winchcombe. If I was allowed to.
It's a late night show, Thursday and Saturday nights, and I'm going to be interviewing artists. So direct message me if you want to appear on the radio, especially if you're familiar with Gloucestershire. Worcestershire is fine too. It really covers Cheltenham, Evesham, most of Worcestershire, all of Gloucestershire. Or if you visited the Cotswolds and adored your visit, or you want to go, or you just love to draw birds in your garden, we're open to all sorts of people. And the idea is I want to keep surprising the listeners. So it's a great chance for me to help promote not just artists, but artists' work, and also encourage people to look at artists' work and buy their work, please.
And buy the work. I think that's so important as well, to actually buy the work. And I mean, if there's anybody that doesn't have, I'm sure they'll find you very easily. But if they don't, and they get in touch with us at the big draw, are you happy for us, Mark, to just send them on to you?
Oh, absolutely. Because the percentage of people who will actually not be too shy to do it will be quite small. So honestly, bring it on. It's 102.7, and you can get it on the internet radio as well. So in theory, Radio Winch can broadcast to the world. But seriously, I really want it to be special. It's going to be called the Arts Rambler, and we're thinking it'll launch mid-October.
Good. That is so good, the title.
Because Winchcomb's a big walker's heaven, you know, because it's on the Cotswold Way.
Yeah.
Anyway,
definitely should try and get a sponsor.
Please, artists, get in touch. Yeah.
So get in touch with you, definitely.
Yeah. And all the arts, everything, art, including architecture.
Yeah.
Anything goes. And those of you who mix like poetry and art and anything, music and art, music and drawing, anything you like, just get in touch, because I want it to be really chock full of ideas, because I'm anticipating that it's going to run through the next lockdown. I'm sorry to be negative, but I think best to prepare for the worst, and a good radio could be very interesting. And of course, we can set up a Facebook page for the program, and Instagram as well, make it more visual. We can work together on this. But I think it's a great chance.
Support you, promote it, and get the word out on social. Yeah. I've got a bit of a quote. So yes, once you've got everything, get it out there, and we can tell everybody about it to get involved. So if people wanted to follow you who didn't know much about your work, where would they go, Mark? Is it best that they go to Instagram or your website, or where would you like them to go? Well,
I have a beautiful website to come that's simply going to be my name, MarthaRichler.com, and my sister-in-law Lisa Richler is I'm very privileged that she's helping me with it. She's an amazing person, marketing genius, and she actually has her own company called Advanced Scout, which helps people, individuals and companies, launch their businesses, but understand the market before they launch. You can imagine how relevant that is right now. So that's why it's called Advanced Scout. Anyway, so my website is just going to be my name. My Instagram, I really love the Instagram, but I haven't been using it enough, so I'm going to use it more from now on. It's simply my name again, Martha Richler. And there's a Zoom art class Instagram called Marf Loves Drawing, but either one, just get in touch. And my email is martha.richler@gmail.com. So if all this was a bit confusing, you can just email me and I'll keep you in touch. My Twitter I had to kill because I was trolled. I'm so sad that I killed it, because I had so much history on it, so many people on it, and I was silly, but I deleted it. So now it's really nothing on it. It's just Martha Richler, and unfortunately I lost it. Yeah, it was just one of those things. A lot of women were trolled, as you know, on Twitter, and I just thought it was like a bitter place. But it's actually becoming more creative. There's an Irish writer called Anne Louise Avery, who's on Twitter right now, and you must follow her. She's amazing. I
follow her as well. I just love her.
She tells a beautiful story.
Incredible, isn't she? She's incredible. Yeah, no, I know.
In tweets. Yeah, she's a novelist, but it's all in tweets, and it's beautiful imagery of foxes and Anne Louise Avery. Anyway, it's incredible.
How funny!
A whole new twist to Twitter. So artists out there, tell your stories on Twitter. Why not? Follow Anne Louise Avery and watch how she does it. Yeah.
I'm very mindful of the time, because if I don't save it, then
the time to go
off, and it won't save properly. I'll get told off by the team. So,
no, I'm ready.
double check. Is there anything else that we haven't? We've tried to set the world to rights, haven't we? Hopefully we've done a job.
I just hope I've encouraged, you know, in some ways it feels a little bit like I'm also trying to encourage myself too. So, you know, I just feel we all need courage right now. We need to be brave.
And
yes.
I think I was going to say, I think if anything, I think artists, I think people who are creative, I think change makers like all of us are chameleons, and I think we are the best adapted to be able to adjust. And
we'll be fine. And and even if we're not fine, draw through that too. Terrible things do happen, and unfortunately life hits you all, and has certainly hit me. And I think you just have to try and draw through that. Just like you eat and sleep, you just keep drawing.
Yeah, keep drawing.
Yeah. Painting or whatever you're doing.
Don't trend on
cooking.
Drawing.
Yes.
All right,
okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for your time. I hope that you know you enjoyed it, and thank you for sharing your time with me. Okay.
Thank you for everyone.
Bye. Night, everybody. Bye bye.
Every Wednesday.
Night from London. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Kate.